Hi everybody, Nathan Ronen, CFA here with a update. This is geared toward candidates in the Level 3 program who are taking their Level 3 exam in either February or August of 2025. Actually, the February exam is just around the corner. It's at the end of this week, and I am getting inundated with questions from candidates who want to understand how to target the essays a little bit better, and any advice I have from them. And also, what are some of the kind of pitfalls or mistakes that I see Level 3 candidates making that causes them to fail the essays and possibly even fail the exam. First of all, let me start out by saying this. If you feel this is going to be helpful to you, please press the subscribe button and the notifications bell right now so that you can continue to receive these updates on a weekly or bi-weekly basis as I add them on social media, to my YouTube channel, to LinkedIn, and some other places. Okay, Nathan, help me out. I want to pass Level 3. I've read the material, I've studied it. I'm a retaker, I'm not a retaker. What advice can you give me so that I don't have to sit for this again? Well, I'm actually in the process right now, even a few days before the exam, of continuing to grade essays, okay? A lot of prep providers don't offer that kind of services, or I should say most prep providers don't offer that service because they don't feel it's scalable. So they want to give you a mock exam with essays and item sets, and you can grade yourself. I've always felt that self-grading in the Level 3 program has very limited benefits. I wouldn't say it's not beneficial at all, but it has its limited benefits because obviously you're asking all these questions. You're not asking them about the item sets, but also you had item sets at Level 2, to be fair, but you've never had essays or constructed responses at any of the other levels. You have constructed responses at Level 3. So let's talk about these constructed responses. I traditionally call them essays, even though they're not really essays, because that's how the CFA Institute referred to them. But we'll call them constructed responses just to be in line with the program. Okay, one of the things that I continuously see as I'm grading one exam after another when it comes to the constructed responses is candidates are expecting every essay to come directly out of a page in the books of the prep provider or from the CFA learning ecosystem. I will tell you this, you should bank on 60% of the essays coming directly out of the materials. For example, you read about how to calculate, the return for a period on a cross-currency basis swap, and they do something like that on the Level 3 exam, whether it be an item set or a constructed response. It's in the program, straightforward, you've done it, you did practice, boom, it shows up. 60% of the questions are going to be like that, more or less, out of the curriculum, out of the readings directly. So if you've done it enough in the curriculum and the chapter on mock exams, fine. 30% of your constructed responses are going to be a little bit more challenging, okay? They are going to require you not only to know a particular reading or material in a particular reading, but to tie it in together with other material that exists elsewhere in the program. Now, a lot of candidates, what they do is they do a disservice to themselves by only reading at Level 3 prep materials or study notes from a major prep provider. That's not enough. The curriculum is chock full of information that the prep notes might gloss over, overlook, or not have at all. So you got to be very careful about that. Now, most of the time the prep notes are pretty good, but there are going to be these 30% questions that are going to be more challenging, and they're going to require you to integrate questions from one part of the curriculum with other parts of the curriculum. For example, they could integrate private wealth management and then ask you how they would achieve this goal. And the answer might be something from the derivatives like a covered call or a equity collar. and you'll look at the answer key and you'll see equity call, and you'll be like, equity collar's not discussed in private wealth management. It's not discussed. It's a monetization strategy, but it's not discussed in the private wealth management. You're right. You're right. You're absolutely right. Who cares? It's in the curriculum. It's in the program. Just because it wasn't in the private wealth management material doesn't mean that if it's in the derivatives, they can't integrate it together. That is what drives many candidates crazy, because they're expecting direct essays coming directly out of a particular page, out of a particular learning outcome statement, and they don't want to see how the whole program fits together. The third component is 10% of your essays or 10% of the questions on your exam are going to be what I call the curveballs. Okay, the one that they don't expect most people to get right. Some people will get it right, most people won't. It's just like any exam. It's a curveball, or it might be very difficult for you, or you might have forgotten it, and that's fine. Now, when it comes to the 10%, the CFA Institute does throw curveballs on the exam. Now, they won't call it a curveball, and they won't say that it's not fair, but basically what they're trying to do is they're not only trying to get you to integrate the material, but they also want to see if you can connect it to other things that you learned along the way in the CFA program. So for example, they're not going to ask you on a level 3 constructed response about operating leases and financing leases from accounting at level 1. Not at all. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about, for example, is the possibility that they actually ask you a question or a constructed response that, could you calculate the return on this portfolio given that it's a tax-deferred portfolio or a tax-exempt portfolio or a taxable portfolio? Now you might say, well, wait a second, isn't that more in the private markets pathway, not really a portfolio management pathway? You could make that argument, but then the CFA Institute, again, this is just a hypothetical example, okay? The CFA Institute could make the argument, well, you went through level 1, you went through level 2, you went through level 3, you had portfolio management at all 3, you've learned a little bit about taxes. You don't know if you're holding an investment for 12 years and you're earning 10% every year and you're not paying taxes, what will be the value of the portfolio at the end of those 12 years? Shame on you. And if you did get taxed at 30% at the end, you can't calculate that. Those are the kinds of things that they're going to throw little curveballs at you, and you can't get all riled up and say, this is not fair, this is not fair. This is not a high school exam, ladies and gentlemen. This is not a college exam. This is not a level 1 exam or a level 2. This is really a level 3 exam designed for people that want to receive a charter, and the CFA Institute wants the charter to have meaning. Imagine you telling your boss in the future that you can't calculate the return on a tax-exempt investment that earns 10% for 12 years. He'd go, didn't you get a charter? So again, I'm not trying to mock anybody or make people feel bad. I'm just telling you what to expect. 60% of your essays, or 60% even of your item sets, whatever questions are going to be, or your constructed responses, I should say, are going to be relatively straightforward, right out of the material, right out of the book. And hopefully if you've studied well and you've really read the learning ecosystem, not just prep notes, shouldn't have any problem answering or getting to the point. And then the other 30% are going to be more challenging questions that are going to integrate material, and then 10% will be curveballs. This would apply both to the constructed responses and the item sets. Now, one thing that I also am seeing is that people are having a tough time answering a question directly, okay, or really trying to understand what the question is asking. That's not it's not that the question is not well worded or that the question is not direct. It's just that they've got all this material in their head and they're trying to regurgitate everything from the curriculum. That is usually a sign of disaster, okay? You don't want to do that. You don't want to, for example, educate the graders. If it's not asking you what a covered call is, you don't need to define a covered call, show how it works in order to answer the question. If you're asked to compare or contrast a covered call in a particular situation with selling the shares outright, just get to the point. And just get to the point and explain how the covered call would differ from the outright sale of the shares if the stock price went up or the stock price went down. Those are the kinds of things you have to be very careful about, is educating the grader. They know the basics. They're not giving you points for the basics. They're giving you points for answering the question. Another thing, if you're asked to justify it with 2 reasons, give your top 2 reasons and don't give a third reason. They're not going to give you extra points. And if the first 2 are wrong, and you got 0. They will not replace the third one for the second one. Don't play with the graders. Now, I have a lot more advice that I go through in my essay, or I should say my constructed response exams. I give feedback, I give a grade, I explain to you what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong. If you ever want to do them, you should. And I also do that in my lecture videos when I'm going through 50 essays throughout the videos, in addition to content. So those were a couple of tips for you for the exam, what to expect. Hope it was helpful. Good luck on the exam in February, and I'll be posting more of these as time goes on for the August people as well. Have a good day.